There is a berry that contains 30 times more vitamin C than an orange, yet 99% of Americans have never heard of it. In 1961, cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin took its oil before humanity's first spacewalk, after Soviet scientists discovered its unique ability to protect human cells. Yet today, fewer than 1% of Americans even know this plant exists, and I'm going to show you why. This is seabuckthorn, and I'm sharing this because someone needs to. Before we go any further, make sure to hit the subscribe button. 500 years before Christ, Greek warriors noticed something impossible. Horses left to perish, sick, malnourished, abandoned, were transforming. Within weeks, their coats developed a metallic shine that healthy, grain-fed horses couldn't match. Wounds closed in days instead of months. They moved with energy that young horses couldn't sustain. These dying animals were eating leaves and berries from a thorny shrub growing where nothing else would. So the warriors started eating it too. Ancient texts describe soldiers who consumed these berries, completing 20-mile forced marches in full armor without stopping. They reported feeling stronger at campaign's end than at the beginning, which shouldn't be physiologically possible. The plant became so renowned for transforming dying horses into the healthiest animals anyone had seen that scholars named it Hippophae rhamnoides, shining horse. They didn't name it for appearance. They named it for what it did. 3 centuries before Christ, Alexander the Great marched 10,000 miles from Greece to India through deserts and mountains that should have destroyed his army. Military historians still cannot explain how his forces maintained strength during campaigns that should have ended in mass starvation. Persian texts provided the answer: Greek soldiers consuming small orange berries that made old men feel young and gave exhausted warriors the energy of fresh troops. In the 13th century, Genghis Khan built the largest continuous land empire in history, from Korea to Hungary. His warriors traveled 100 miles daily for weeks without resupply. Enemy armies that tried to match this pace collapsed from exhaustion. Khan discovered why during a winter retreat. He'd abandoned injured horses, expecting them to freeze. Months later, those horses weren't just alive. They were healthier than the ones his soldiers had carefully fed all winter. They had survived eating seabuckthorn. Khan ordered every warrior to carry these berries, declaring that soldiers who consumed them daily could outlast, outfight, and outlive any opponent. Jump forward to April 1961. Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin prepares for humanity's first spacewalk. Russian scientists face a challenge. Cosmic radiation damages human cells in ways that seemed irreversible. They'd tested hundreds of compounds. Nothing worked. Then they studied seabuckthorn. After 20 years of research, they discovered this plant produces compounds that help cells repair radiation damage. The chemistry seemed almost impossible, but laboratory results were consistent. Gagarin consumed concentrated seabuckthorn oil before his mission and completed the first human spacewalk successfully. That same preparation later helped people exposed to severe radiation. From ancient battlefields to Soviet space programs across 2,500 years, people who needed extreme performance discovered the same plant independently. And somehow, this plant is virtually unknown today. We're told oranges are nature's vitamin C champions. Doctors recommend them. Grocery stores dedicate entire sections to citrus. The entire citrus industry, worth billions, is built on oranges being your best vitamin C source. But compared to seabuckthorn, oranges are almost irrelevant. One orange contains 53 milligrams of vitamin C per 100 grams. Seabuckthorn contains 400 to 2,500 milligrams per 100 grams. That's 12 to 30 times more vitamin C in a single berry cluster than in the fruit everyone's told to eat their entire lives. One handful of seabuckthorn delivers more vitamin C than 6 whole oranges. And you can grow this in zones 3 through 8, Minnesota to Georgia, Maine to California, where orange trees would die in the first winter. But vitamin C is just the beginning. You've probably been told to buy fish oil for omega-3 fatty acids, evening primrose oil for omega-6, and omega-7 barely exists in accessible plant foods. Seabuckthorn berry oil contains 24 to 40% omega-7. the highest concentration of any plant source known to science. Most plants contain 0%. Seabuckthorn is one of only 3 plant sources on Earth with any measurable amount. But here's what made me stop and reread the research. Seabuckthorn is the only plant delivering all 4 omega fatty acids 3, 6, 7, and 9 in a single source. The supplement industry insists you need multiple bottles. One plant makes that unnecessary. We're told to eat almonds for vitamin E. Almonds contain 25.6 milligrams per 100 grams. Seabuckthorn contains 202 milligrams. That's 8 times more vitamin E than almonds. And unlike isolated supplements, seabuckthorn delivers all 4 natural forms of vitamin E, the complete spectrum your body recognizes and uses. For iron, beef contains 2.6 milligrams per 100 grams. Spinach has 2.7. Seabuckthorn contains 40 to 150 milligrams, depending on soil quality. That's up to 55 times more iron than foods constantly marketed as iron-rich. Seabuckthorn contains 18 of the 22 known amino acids, more diversity than quinoa, the expensive superfood imported at $8 per pound. But here's what really amazed me. It's not just what seabuckthorn contains. It's how it grows. The plant performs actinoryzal nitrogen fixation. Most plants need nitrogen from soil or fertilizer. When soil runs out, plants die. Industrial farming requires constant nitrogen applications, costing $50 to $200 per acre annually. Seabuckthorn doesn't need any of that. It partners with bacteria called frankia that live in root nodules. These bacteria take nitrogen from air, which is 78% nitrogen, and convert it into forms the plant uses. But here's the extraordinary part. The plant produces more nitrogen than it needs and releases excess into surrounding soil. It doesn't just survive on poor land, it improves the soil every year. Seabuckthorn thrives on abandoned quarries, eroding hillsides, roadside ditches, anywhere conventional farming has failed. It requires 0 fertilizer, ever. It doesn't deplete land, it enriches it. While industrial agriculture strips soil nutrients and requires expensive inputs, this plant feeds itself from air and makes land better for everything around it. Over 190 bioactive compounds have been identified in seabuckthorn. More than kale, more than blueberries, more than acai or goji. Eggs are called complete with 13 essential vitamins and minerals. Seabuckthorn delivers vitamins A, C, E, K, bone, B2, B6, and B12 rare in plants, plus minerals, potassium, iron, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, plus carotenoids and flavonoids. This is a plant that evolved to survive extreme cold, drought, poor soil, and high altitudes, and had to pack every survival advantage into its biochemistry to do it. If seabuckthorn is this extraordinary, why have 99% of Americans never heard of it? In 1923, seabuckthorn was introduced to the United States. It naturalized successfully in Canada by the 30s, thriving from Zone 3 to 8. While Soviet and German scientists spent 70 years developing improved varieties and harvesting equipment, American institutions did nothing. 101 years later, less than 1% of Americans know this exists. The official explanation is harvesting difficulty. Berries attach firmly to thorny branches and don't fall off naturally. Early methods required cutting branches. Handpicking is labor-intensive. The thorns are sharp. This sounds reasonable. But by the 1990s, 30 years ago, German and Russian engineers had developed specialized equipment solving this completely. Pneumatic shakers, mechanical combs, systems processing millions of pounds annually. This technology exists and is used successfully right now in Germany, Russia, Canada, and China. So the too difficult excuse is 3 decades outdated. Yet it's still the reason given for why American agriculture ignores this plant. Let me show you what's really happening. Seabuckthorn can't be patented. It's a wild species. Companies can't control who grows it. Once established, it produces for 20 to 30 years with 0 nitrogen fertilizer, minimal water, and no pesticides or herbicides. You plant it once, and it feeds you for 3 decades. No subscription, no recurring purchases. A mature plant produces 10 to 30 pounds annually. A small backyard hedge could produce more vitamin C than a family of 4 could consume yearly without bottles, without industrial processing, without shipping. BASF SE generates over $2 billion annually from synthetic vitamin production. Their business model requires you buying bottles that run out so you purchase more forever. If 10 million Americans planted seabuckthorn, that's billions in lost revenue. DSM Nutritional Products and Pfizer control significant portions of the $21.2 billion US vitamin C supplement market. They've invested decades marketing synthetic vitamins as superior. They fund research and medical education to ensure doctors recommend their products. Their model depends on repeat purchases. A perennial plant producing for 30 years eliminates that. Chinese pharmaceutical manufacturers control 94% of global vitamin C production, worth $2.37 billion. China also produces 90% of world seabuckthorn supply, but they don't teach Americans to grow it. They export processed products, oils, extracts, capsules at significant markup. They profit from processing and distribution. They lose if you grow it yourself. Total markets affected global vitamin C supplements, $2.37 billion. US. Vitamin C market, $21.2 billion. Citrus industries, $3.35 billion. Over $26 billion in industries benefiting from seabuckthorn remaining unknown. Every advantage, making seabuckthorn valuable to you, produces vitamins without purchases, grows without inputs, thrives for decades, provides nutrition from land growing. Nothing else makes it worthless to corporations whose revenue depends on recurring sales. They can't patent your backyard. They can't charge subscriptions for sunlight and bacteria. So they simply never mentioned it existed. While East German plantations from the 60s still operate profitably, while Canadian farmers have harvested since the 30s, American textbooks don't mention it. Medical schools don't teach it. USDA programs don't promote it. 101 years of silence. But seabuckthorn is too resilient to stay hidden. Seabuckthorn has narrow silvery green leaves 2 to 3 inches long, with silver undersides. When you look closely, you'll see dense branches covered in sharp thorns, usually 1 to 3 inches long. From late summer through fall, bright orange oval berries cluster tightly along the branches, almost glowing in the sunlight. At maturity, the shrubs reach about 6 to 12 feet tall. You'll commonly find seabuckthorn along roadsides in Canada, on abandoned properties in coastal areas, along stream banks, and at old farm edges across the upper Midwest and the prairie provinces. To grow, plants or seeds come from established nurseries like Oikos Tree Crops, Burnt Ridge Nursery, or Grimo Nut Nursery. Quality seed usually costs $8 to $15 for 25 to 50 seeds. Both male and female plants are needed. Only the females produce berries, and without males nearby, you won't get fruit. One male supports roughly 6 to 8 females. Seabuckthorn grows in zones 3 through 8 from Minnesota to Georgia and from Maine to Northern California. It tolerates extreme temperatures, surviving 40 below zero and well over 100 degrees. Planting works best in fall or early spring. Seeds need cold stratification, so you can plant in fall and let winter do the work, or refrigerate seeds for 60 to 90 days before spring planting. Well-drained soil is essential. More plants fail from poor drainage than anything else. If you're dealing with clay soil, planting on mounds helps. The plant prefers poor soil, needs full sun for at least 6 hours a day, and won't fruit in shade. Once established, it becomes extremely drought tolerant. Regular watering during the first year helps, then it largely takes care of itself. Plants should be spaced 3 to 6 feet apart. Nitrogen fertilizer should be avoided. The plant produces its own nitrogen through root bacteria, and adding fertilizer can reduce fruit production. Berries ripen from August through October. You'll want thick leather gloves because the thorns are sharp. A traditional method freezes branches and shakes the berries loose, while modern methods include vibrating combs or careful hand picking. For juice, the berries are blended whole and strained through cheesecloth. You'll notice the flavor is extremely tart, like cranberries, multiplied by 3 with tropical notes. So most people dilute it with water or apple juice, sweeten it with honey, or add it to smoothies. For storage, berries are dehydrated at 115 degrees for 8 to 12 hours, until leathery and used like dried cranberries. Seabuckthorn is generally very safe, but because it's high in vitamin C, you shouldn't overconsume if you're prone to kidney stones. It may also have mild, blood-thinning effects, so caution is advised with anticoagulants. Only the berries and seed oil are edible. Growing seabuckthorn isn't about adding a fruit plant. What you're actually doing is opting out of a system, profiting from your continuous dependency. Every plant you establish represents 20 to 30 years of vitamin C that doesn't come from pharmaceutical manufacturers. Decades of omega fatty acids that don't require purchasing supplements. Living proof you don't need their proprietary formulations or recurring subscriptions. When you plant seabuckthorn, you're joining something spanning thousands of years. Greek warriors, Mongolian Khans, Soviet cosmonauts, modern homesteaders who understood the most valuable plants are ones that can't be controlled or commodified. You're choosing independence from pharmaceutical models designed to keep you purchasing forever. You're building resilience against supply disruptions and climate instability. You're preserving knowledge that powerful industries spent 101 years keeping quiet. Every cluster of orange berries ripening in your yard is evidence they didn't succeed. I share these forgotten superfoods because someone needs to. I research plants bred out of agriculture because they made people too self-sufficient. Herbs that became restricted because they competed with prescriptions. Vegetables quietly dropped from catalogs because they grew too easily and lasted too long. Subscribe so you don't miss what I share next. Plant something they can't patent. They kept seabuckthorn hidden for 101 years. You can break that silence in one growing season, one plant, one harvest. One generation teaching the next that food independence doesn't require permission from corporations profiting when you don't know alternatives exist. This is seabuckthorn. This is knowledge they hoped you'd never find. This is yours now.